Draft season is officially here. A lot of news coming out of the Combine in Indianapolis, specifically from John Lynch's recent press conference. I want to talk about some key takeaways from what he said, and then, of course, the 49ers' top offseason priorities. I'm going to talk about players that they have on the roster, as well as the needs that the 49ers have to address in this upcoming NFL draft. So with that being said, let's get into it, y'all. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action. Had to jump on here, make it short, make it sweet, but we all know the NFL Combine is officially here. It's that time for all the rumors, for all the bashing, for all the hype of all of these upcoming players. Who's going to get drafted? Where are they going to get drafted? Mock Draft 7.0 is all in motion and in full effect. But what I wanted to talk about first is John Lynch's recent press conference. So as we all know, it's been around everywhere on the internet streets. The NFL salary cap went up, and it went up over $30 million per year. So the cap space has increased to $255.4 million. Stating the obvious here, that's great news for the 49ers, but of course it's great news for every NFL team because it all affects every NFL team. So with that being said, John Lynch came on and spoke the other day, and he did a quick 15 minutes press conference with local media as well as some national media, I believe was there as well too. He dapped up Big Dom, the Eagles security guard who got into it with Dre Greenlaw. John Lynch has known Dom for quite some time, and I thought it was just funny to see them dap it up. NFL circles are small, and guys that have been in the league for as long as they both have tend to have great relationships with one another. They're very similar type of human beings that are in the NFL and around the NFL. So that was fun to see. No malice there. Handled it like men. We're good to go. But really, when it comes down to John Lynch's press conference, out of all the things he said, there was really only two kind of key takeaways that I got from the questions he was asked. The first one being tight ends. So that's something a lot of people haven't been talking about or haven't seen it on many people's radar, is the tight end position, specifically for the 49ers offense and the Kyle Shanahan scheme. So as we know, last year, the 49ers drafted two tight ends. The current two tight ends outside of Kittle on the 49ers are both upcoming free agents. And then, of course, they drafted Cam Latu, who was supposed to be the guy coming out of Alabama. He got injured, and then he was MIA for the remaining year. So doesn't look like there's much promise there, but we've seen this from other players before where they don't play at all their first year. A guy like Aaron Banks comes to mind, and then they get some playing time in their second year, and then they start to ball out like Aaron Banks did. But John Lynch, he emphasized the need of having two tight ends in Kyle Shanahan's offense. And for the most part, Kittle has always been the go-to guy, of course, all-pro, Pro Bowler, boss. And he's a dog. But it doesn't get talked about that that would be something of a 49ers need that they want to go out and get. The problem is they drafted two guys last year, and clearly it's kind of TBD to see if those guys worked out or will work out. But I thought that was just a kind of nice little insight into how the 49ers, what they're looking at when it comes to specifically offense. Because outside of the obvious, the right side of the offensive line, there's not too many obvious holes on the 49ers team. I mean, if anything, they have some of the best players in those positions. So again, just something that was interesting to take away. Tight end, the need or requirement of Kyle Shanahan's offense to need two tight ends on the field. So be on the lookout for them to scoop up a tight end with one of their 11 draft picks. So that was point one. The second point that I took, they want to sign Brandon Aiyuk to a long-term deal. No shit. Brandon Aiyuk's a stud. Brandon Aiyuk is the number one true wide receiver on the 49ers. So it makes absolute sense that John Lynch wants to sign a long-term deal. And if history indicates anything, the 49ers, when they draft and bring up their players, their guys, they ultimately will get a deal done. Now, with that being said, I still very much anticipate it to get a little messy, similar to what we saw in Debo, but I suspect the 49ers, they're going to continue to work on their timeline. They didn't make an exception for Nick Bosa. They didn't make an exception for Debo, so they will get it done, but it will be coming up to training camp and then potentially into or at the end of training camp, worst case scenario. The actual worst case scenario is that BA has to play out his 5th year, get $14 million. But again, they are safe from losing Brandon Aiyuk this season, most definitely, just because he's still under contract. But I suspect it's going to get a little nasty. Obviously, as the player, you want your deal done with the amount you think you're owed, and Brandon Aiyuk deserves every penny that he's going to get. But by all means, the 49ers have a process of doing things, especially under this John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan era, of getting deals done, but it takes some time. And in between that, it's anybody's guess what can happen. Request a trade like Debo, dead silent and professional like Bosa. You don't know, but I presume the deal will get done. It's just not going to get done as soon as everybody would like. Which again, you just have to remember, that's standard under this regime. Also, something I found interesting that a lot of people aren't talking about is Brandon Aiyuk's agent, Ryan Williams. He's with Athletes First Agency. He is John Lynch's best friend. John Lynch was his best man at his wedding. So that should add a security blanket of people that are worried out there that BA potentially could get traded. I think there is a 5% chance that any team will actually offer something so substantial that the 49ers would have no choice but to trade him. There's a lot of wide receivers out there. There's a lot of wide receivers in the draft coming up. So I find it hard to believe that a team would offer something so substantial, which is what the 49ers would need to get the deal done in order to get BA out of SF. Not going to happen. Highly doubt it. And the fact that John Lynch is dealing with his best friend negotiating on behalf of BA makes it that much more comforting knowing that the deal should get done. There's deep personal ties here, and John Lynch has said openly and adamantly he wants BA to be on the 49ers for a long time.
Brandon's one that we think incredibly highly of. One of my favorite just guys around our building, the way he approaches the game. He's a competitor. He's a warrior. He plays with such a physicality, also with a grace, the way some of the positions his body can get into. And then he's got a flair for making plays when it matters most. And he's served us very well as a franchise. And, I think we've got a nice track record of extending the players that are important to us. And Brandon's a guy we want to keep around for a long time.
So let's pivot into now priorities for the San Francisco 49ers. The first thing I want to touch on, though, first is let's talk about how many players in positions the 49ers already have locked down. And I'm not talking just kind of your random players. I'm talking top-notch players in the entire NFL. Well, one, you have a quarterback, Brock Purdy. You have a running back, Christian McCaffrey. You got 2 wide receivers, and I'm including Brandon Aiyuk in that because he's still under contract. And then you have the best left tackle, Trent Williams, left guard, Aaron Banks, who's an absolute stud, tight end in Kittle, fullback in Kyle Juszczyk. And then when you look at the defensive side of the ball, our secondary, for a first time in a long time, feels like it's locked down. You got an absolute dog in Diamondor Lenore, and then you got all-pro Mooney Ward on the opposite side of the DB position. And then when you look at safeties, Hufunga's coming back, and you got Jair Brown, who continues to show what he showed in college as being a ball hawk, getting interceptions in multiple games with limited starts this year. So that is something everyone should feel good about. And then you have the best linebacker duo. One of them's coming back from an Achilles tear. We'll see how long that takes in terms of timeline. And then you got the best defensive end and 2 unbelievable defensive tackles. So when you just look at the starters on this 49er roster, there's not too many holes or extreme needs that the 49ers have when you just look at it. But what it does indicate is the 49ers team is extremely top heavy. And with that, you need backup and role players to be able to fill in when there's the inevitable injury in pro football. So first, let's talk about roster players. The most obvious, as I've already touched on, Brandon Aiyuk. He is the only true wide receiver, number 1 wide receiver, pure receiver that the 49ers have. Jennings is definitely that guy too, but Brandon Aiyuk, I think it's not that debatable, is better and more of a threat. His precision route running, his fucking wingspan, he catches damn near everything that gets thrown to him. He's the one that provides consistent separation when running routes against any corners or safeties in the entire NFL. And again, since I've already talked about how I feel about Brandon Aiyuk and the relationship that John Lynch has with his agent, the most obvious, not too concerned about it. I believe a deal will get done. But then after that, it's when you start to get question marks. I think the second most important player that's currently on the 49ers roster that the Niners need to get something done with is Jennings. Jennings, again, for those that watch the 49ers, you see what he does in the run game. You see what he does in critical third downs. That guy is a fucking dog and makes plays. It seems like damn near any time we need a play, he can get the job done, and he's reliable in doing so. And he's the only one that's kind of really has that true big body wide receiver presence, and he's physical as fuck. He is, the way I look at it, he is essentially like the Dre Greenlaw of the offense. He sets the tone. Debo also sets the tone, but I think Jennings, players feed off his physicality and him getting the other teams fired up. I mean, how many times have we seen Jennings get a flag thrown on the defender because he is so irritating and so relentless? So I think it's without question, they need to bring Jennings back. And I believe John Lynch mentioned that's been a high priority. The third would be Feliciano. Feliciano has made a difference for this team. Although he didn't start last year, you saw what happened in the Super Bowl when he got injured and went out. They started getting dominated. Feliciano is a very, very, very good, reliable vet at the guard position, and specifically on the right side, where our weak side of our offensive line is. He's the guy that we need to bring back, and that should be a deal that doesn't affect the cap in some insane amount. And it's hopefully something he is willing and wanting to come back to the team, but he is somebody we need to bring back, and I believe he's the third most important person. And then fourth and fifth, you can switch up the order, but I believe the 49ers need to bring back Clelin Ferrell and attempt to bring back Javon Kinlaw. If Javon Kinlaw gets a big offer from somebody, although he played the best football of his career, his short career in the NFL last year. He's obviously somebody that hasn't been that dependable due to injuries. He's a monster, but can he be consistently available for the 49ers to utilize? And if they're able to bring him in on a good deal, they should obviously want to do that and be willing to do that, because our defensive line under this regime, although they spend a lot of money on the defensive line, very top heavy position, it's been a revolving door because of the fact players come in, they get better with the 49ers on their 1 year, 2 year deal, and they go get paid someplace else, which is a good way of going about it because you need such a big rotating cast on the defensive line. Clelin Ferrell, he was definitely, without question, the second best defensive end that the 49ers had, obviously following Nick Bosa. So they need to bring back Clelin Ferrell. I think he would want to come back. He's absolute boys with Eric Armstead. So hopefully that's something they can bring back. Those are my top 5 rostered players that the 49ers need to make a priority. Now let's pivot to the NFL draft. The 49ers clearly have a need. Right guard, right tackle. That has been and was the entire season by far and away the weakest spot of this team. Chris Jones fucking dominated and won the Chiefs the Super Bowl because of the right side of our offensive line. Now, I think the 49ers can go about it two ways. Depending on who's available, if there's a right tackle or a tackle available, they should get a tackle because McKivitz is a solid, decent player who can easily move to right guard, which would be something the Niners could utilize depending on what Feliciano does. This is all a domino. So we'll have to see as the pieces start to drop what the best decisions would be for the 49ers. But ideally, they need to get another tackle. They passed up Tristan Wirfs the year they drafted Javon Kinlaw, which, wasn't the best, but it's always easier hindsight, 2020, all that shit. I get it. But they need a tackle or a guard. Whoever the player is they have higher on their draft board by the time they pick, that needs to be pick one. Because if they're able to secure that, my God, this team could make some pretty big strides, which is insane considering how good they already are on offense. And then I think secondly, they need a big body receiver. Ideally somebody that's a burner, and it would be a plus if they were a big body. We don't really have too many fast, deep threat guys. That's supposed to be what Danny Gray was, but Danny Gray clearly is not cut from the same cloth that our other receivers are. He's gotten zero playing time, and I just think he's not somebody that the 49ers are going to keep on this team, let alone he'll get much playing time if he is on the team, may just be a special teamer guy or may not even dress like he didn't last year. So I think they need a speedy wide receiver to go opposite of Brandon Aiyuk and somebody who can stretch the field and put the fear of God in the secondary of opposing defenses. And then I got three remaining ones. The 49ers, I think it's clear they need to get a nickel cornerback. They need another secondary piece. Again, we got the two outside DBs locked in with some absolute animals, but they do not have a nickel. That was a problem all year for the 49ers. Avery Thomas was not able to do good enough to allow Deommodore Lenoir to remain at nickel. And I honestly think Deommodore Lenoir is better on the outside than he is in the nickel. So I don't think you want to fuck with that too much. And then, of course, as I stated earlier, you need a big rotating cast on the defensive line. They need another defensive end, someone to get opposite of Nick Bosa. Chase Young is not going to come back. There is a 1% probability that happens, and they need somebody. Cleveland Farrell's coming back off a big injury. If they're able to sign him, the Niners need to have another defensive end and somebody they can draft who can actually get some snaps and playing time consistently, because the 49ers can't do what they did last year with the production that they got opposite of Nick Bosa, specifically when Cleveland Farrell came back. Randy Gregory's not going to come back. I think there's a small likelihood that happens. And then the final thing is, I think it's worthwhile drafting a center. Not to say anything's wrong with our center, but I think they need to start developing a center because center is so crucial in the Shanahan offense. They got a lot of shit to take care of, and we need somebody young, cheap, and can start to get in there. Shanahan's only had vets his entire career as the 49ers head coach. They need to get a young center in there and start getting somebody ready to get some meaningful playing time if something were to happen. So with all that being said, key players on the current roster, top priorities in the NFL draft for the 49ers. The good news is the 49ers have 11 draft picks. So all the needs that the 49ers have, they can all get drafted. They can target those positions, target the players on the draft board, and the 49ers will be ready to roll come the 2024 NFL season to get back to the Super Bowl. All right, y'all, I will be back. Until then, like, comment, subscribe, hit me up. Peace.
Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I fit it up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I fit it up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. I've been on the flex since flex zone. Neighborhood all in your eardrums.